So we've prepared this press conference to update folks on what's been happening on what the Black Student Union at UC Santa Barbara has been doing. So we're going to read the statement that we've prepared. As you can see, it's pretty windy. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. We want to thank all of you that are here today physically and in spirit, standing in solidarity with us. We called this press conference to put on public record why it is that we made our demands on March 2013 and what progress has occurred since then. As Black students on this campus, many of us faced tremendous institutional racism and obstacles in our journey during our undergraduate career. The fact that the number is unacceptably low and stagnant for Black students, staff, and faculty throughout the UC system for the last few decades seriously affects our recruitment and retention in this institution. For example, the UCSB College of Engineering tenure-track Black faculty goal is at 2.8%, and currently they are at 0%. The UCSB Division of Math, Life, and Physical Sciences set a goal for Black tenured faculty at 2.6%, and currently they only have 0.4%. 0.4%. These figures are abysmal and unacceptable. Ranging from the daily microaggressions to outright hostilities as well as racially themed parties, our experiences on this campus warrant a deeper commitment to the services necessary to recruit and retain us. 2 years ago, these are examples, there was a gangster-themed party in which white students dressed in stereotypical gangster attire, reflecting perceptions of what is perceived as urban African-American dress. There was another gangster-themed party at UCSB earlier this year. This year, a student posted a public racial epithet, F and words, targeting African-American students on this campus. The academic and support services for Black students on this campus is almost non-existent. The environment here at UCSB is hostile and we need to change it. Therefore, having identified the needs of our community through extensive research and collaboration with UCSB peers, administrators, staff, and faculty, the Black Student Union at UC Santa Barbara made several demands to Chancellor Henry T. Yang. Those demands are as follows: more services to recruit Black students on the admissions front, 2 psychologists who have extensive experience working with Black students, access to alumni and their networks and funds, aggressive recruitment of Black faculty within and outside of the Black Studies Department, the name change of North Hall to Malcolm X Hall, and permanent display inside North Hall that reflects the history of student activism in that building. These demands were made in order to make UC Santa Barbara a better resourced and more equitable university for all students, staff, and faculty. Since then, the campus has responded positively to our demands and we have made some significant progress. The Division of Student Affairs is authorized with full and permanent funding to fully implement an admissions plan to recruit Black students and hire 2 full-time psychologists. The Executive Vice Chancellor has agreed to provide resources for the permanent display in North Hall. We met with Chancellor Yang, Dean Oliver, EVC Lucas, Dr. Jeffrey Stewart, Associate Vice Chancellor Everett, and Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs Michael Young this morning to discuss the recruitment and retention of Black faculty across the disciplines. We proposed a solid list of recommendations the campus can commit to in order to increase the number of junior ladder faculty at UCSB. It was a productive and positive meeting, and there were verbal commitments made about the initiatives we discussed. We will have those commitments in writing by next week. We remain cautiously optimistic about the progress we have made thus far and what remains to be done. We will continue to meet with UCSB administrators throughout the summer and continuing into the fall. We aren't done, but the conversation is started. Thank you. In solidarity and struggle, Black Student Union, UC Santa Barbara, June 7th, 2013. We'll now open the floor for any questions, comments, concerns, remarks, anything y'all want.
Should we take the microphone out there so they can speak into it?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you all raise your hand, we can take the microphone to you. That way everybody can hear the question, and then we can answer it up front or either in the crowd. So if anybody would like to speak, okay.
Thank you. Is that okay? Well, thanks for updating us and telling us what's going on and doing all the work that you've been doing. Can you just talk a little bit more about the verbal commitments that you just talked about? Like, what does that really encompass? And what gives you the notion that the verbal is actually going to become reality?
Okay, this isn't going to work. If everybody, before you ask your question, if you could say your name and possibly what organization you represent as well, just so we know we're all here in solidarity, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Professor Ralph Armbruster Sandoval, Chicano Studies in the house. What's good? Thank you for a great question. For the verbal commitments that were made this morning, we will wait until we have them in written form by next week, which is what we requested from administration, so that we have something to keep each other accountable and to keep the administration accountable. And we will be able to reveal that like once the recommendations and all revisions have been made to what we proposed. So we're going to wait to see until we have it in written form before we can speak on it, just make sure that everyone's on the same page. I hope that satisfies you, but we will be happy to provide what it is, what we come to and what written commitments we are given by next week. Other questions?
Would you mind coming to the front?
Hi, I'm Maria. I'm with the Human Rights Board. I wanted to ask do you know if there's going to be any sort of student input on what the exact whatever they're going to have at North Hall to commemorate the action that happened there?
Hi everyone, my name is Ty, 4th year anthropology, Black Studies major. I'm glad you all came out. So yeah, there actually will be student input. We already have a group that we have set to work on that specific demand. And we've already started researching in the library and stuff, and we're gonna get started this summer. So yeah. Are there?
Yeah. So how do they feel about the demand regarding changing North Hall to Malcolm X Hall?
Well, that demand, we're still working that one out. It wasn't an immediate yes. There was a lot of conversation around it, and there's still conversations being had. A part of that has to do with we're not really at liberty to discuss everything that goes along with that, because as Yoel said earlier, we still, as of now, it's a verbal commitment, and we want to wait till we get it in writing, and it's for sure. So we're making sure that we're distributing the right facts. Are there any other questions?
My name's Cameron. I'm with the Santa Barbara News Press. And can you give us some more specifics on the demands that you made pertaining to recruitment and retention of African American faculty? I saw on your petition that part of that was asking for incentive programs that would both draw faculty here and keep them here. I don't know if you can speak more towards that, or also more specifically about that demand.
Thank you, Cameron. I got your email earlier, but I was running around, so that's why I couldn't respond to you. Right, we had to prepare this thing. In terms of what the list of recommendations we submitted to the administration this morning, we can't fully disclose that information yet until we get what is agreed to and what is not agreed to with the administration. But there were some verbal commitments and some agreements and some discussion that was started on which ones are good, which ones need work, and which ones need extra thought. Let me put it that way. And then they will get back to us with a response next week as to which recommendations they believe they can advance and commit to at the moment. Other questions or follow-up questions? Yeah.
My name is Ansel Lundberg, and I'm with Campus Democrats. And I'm just wondering, is there anything that you think the administration could do or anyone could do to address the theme parties? Because that's just like unacceptable, but it still happens. So is there any dialogue that's been going on about that?
Well, I think part of that pertains to creating awareness, on creating and encouraging awareness on this campus so people know. They're not just going into these parties blind as to what a gangster is, quote unquote. It's not just something they see on a movie. Like, this is an actual lifestyle that people live for certain reasons. It's not just for fun. So if they could, I guess, as a university, as an institution, if they can encourage the learning of certain behaviors, I guess, amongst certain communities and certain lifestyles, then I guess ideally we would have less of those parties, less gangster themed parties. Did you want to?
Are there any other questions?
Hi, I'm Danny. I'm from the co-ops and the Asian American Studies Department, as well as the API floor. I'm a mentor. I talked to fellow API students, and it was kind of alarming because when we had our academic advisor, John Park, they spoke a lot about a post-racial society because they're talking about letting go of racist history. And I don't know if many of you understand. I'm from the Bay, so the coalition of communities of color are really strong, obviously. It's part of the reason why I chose to write my thesis on the Asian American movement. But to be honest, I'm graduating, and I'm worried that this is a great sense of community, but how do we outreach even further? How do I help to make sure that this keeps on? How do I make sure that this is sustainable? How do we fight the cynicism of the people of color in the wider range, you know? I'm graduating and I'm still left with a lot of cynicism, and I feel like, I don't know, there's some way of getting closure, but that's more of a community effort.
I feel like there are a wide range of activities that you could partake, or even careers that you can go into that deal with fighting racism or social justice, which is a huge one. It all depends on your interests, what you're interested in. Teaching is a big one. If you want to work with, I don't know, like policy or something like that to actually change like laws and stuff like that, I think that would be really good. It all depends on like where your interests lie. So.
In a lot of ways, I do feel exactly what you're feeling in terms of the cynicism and how do we sustain the fight for social justice, right? How do you sustain the fight for changes that we would like to see that we know are wrong? It's a hard question, and I think it's a question like, you know, we can all come up with an answer with when we sit down and dialogue with each other. For me personally, like some of the things in terms of just simply like the 7 demands that we made, right? A lot of the people who are like working on this demand actively are like graduating seniors, including myself. And one of the good things we found is that, like, you know, being able to identify certain students who are 2nd years, 3rd years, who are willing to take on the fight and really like working together with these people and empowering them to like really fully understand what their powers are and to take over, and to like the transfer of knowledge when it comes to organizing is something that we really have to work on, like all of us, because a lot of us leave and then there's a gap about how to do things, how to organize, and how to like create different things, and that's something I think we could all work on. But aside from that, you know, I lack the knowledge to give you like an answer that will satisfy you or satisfy me too. It's just something we all have to sit down, like reflect on our weaknesses and like strategize better on how it is that we could create some models or maybe some institutes or what have you to transfer the knowledge consistently. The one thing I've noticed is that, you know, this fight requires a lot out of people, and a lot of energy, a lot of time is like spent into it. And not a lot of people, even from within our communities, are willing to pay that price. but there is always like people dedicated to pay that price, and that's how we've been able to get like thus far, why we're still alive, why we're still organizing. And that's one thing like I've just personally learned, is that not everyone's always going to jump to pay that price, because there's a steep price to pay for it. So, but when you do find the people who are willing, and you create community around that, and you go after your goals, that's the one thing that has given me solace, you know? I don't know if that answers your question. Hi, Norma.
Hi, my name is Norma Orozco, and I guess I represent IDEAS, which is a support group for undocumented students here on this campus. And my question is, because I've worked with the administration in the past on trying to get things mobilized on an administrative level, and I know that a lot of times there's these promises, but without a deadline, many of the time end up being empty promises, like, oh yeah, we'll get to that eventually. So I know that you said there was some demands that were met or some conversation that was done verbally, but are there any set timelines that have been set, for example, like getting the psychologist or getting the faculty, so that those of us who will be here next year can continue to press faculty and ensure that these demands are being met in a timely manner?
Okay, so for the psychologists, there actually has been a commitment. The money has already been allocated for that, and they've already started to begin to put out the work description for that, so that they can begin interviewing and begin hiring for that. The display, that's already in the works. There's already been talk of getting a contractor for North Hall to see just spatially how we can work that out and get a display of what actually happened in 1968 there. Yoel, do you want to add anything?
And on the admissions front, the job descriptions, I think, almost out for the counselor that's to be hired, and for the initiatives. So for the first 4 demands, pretty much, the money's already been dispersed. The Division of Student Affairs from Campus Administration. In terms of deadlines, that's really something that was very critical, and we took care of. In terms of like putting our language as direct and clear as possible, which is that these demands need to be implemented effective immediately. So when they said they would do it, then we were like, when is this going to get done by? So even when for the alternative solutions that are being proposed to us about faculty and what have you, we are like pushing on making sure that all these things are being committed to be done by a certain deadline. And when that deadline is not, if that deadline is not met, then we have another conversation to have. But setting deadline is like the biggest thing. Always keep, give people on their toes. Administrators on this campus, they're really good to responding when you give them a deadline to do it. But when you don't, they will take 20 years, 30, 40, 50 years to do it. So make sure that you have a good timeline for everything.
Another thing that Yoel mentioned when we first began was that these people are really used to working on deadlines. I mean, of course, not from us, the students who they actually work for, but from the higher-ups, the bosses that decide what our tuition is going to be this year. But that was really good mentality to have going into this, that we have to give them deadlines, or like Yoel said, they'll take 20, 30, 40 years, because honestly, they have no initiative, they have no incentive to do this for us. They forgot that they work for us. So it's kind of our job to remind them. But yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Kashira. I'm an executive member of BSU. Norma, more than just like giving them deadlines, it's also important that we hold them accountable, and that we like continue like having meetings with them and continue talking to them and holding them accountable as well, because they can meet the deadline or they cannot meet the deadline, but as long as like we're holding them accountable and like constantly following up with them, like that's really important as well. Oh, did anyone have any more questions? Oh.
Hi, my name is Adil, and I'm asking these questions because I imagine some people might be missing some very basic elements. So first, why is it important to prioritize the representation of black students and faculty? And if administration followed BSU's demands, and down the line we do have increased enrollment of black students and increased representation of black faculty, is that enough? What else would BSU want to see from the campus to make sure that it's a safe and welcoming place?
So I'll attack the first part. So you're saying, like, why is it important to see people like us in spaces like this? Well, from me, personal perspective, I feel like when I can see people around me that look like me, that are doing what I want to do in the future, it gives you like a sense of hope, and you feel like, you can accomplish what they've accomplished, just because, you kind of have a similar struggle, and like they're there for you to work with you to work through it. So, and I don't know, Yoel. Also, you want to answer
that? More than us just having a face on this campus, also making sure that we're respected on this campus and we're not having like theme parties, or we're not having any backlash against our black bodies. That's important as well.
And also, just like you were saying, like, is that enough? If we get the numbers here, is that enough? No, that's not enough. What we really need is like just for everybody to be educated, not only about the black community, but about all communities, and that's how I feel like society as a whole will benefit. So.
The one thing I would add is in terms of recruiting more students and staff here, what we're dealing here is with like a fundamentally unequal educational system, right? And that has to be addressed. Like we could always talk about how we could increase their representation and the criticality of the people who come in here, but fundamentally at the high school level, at the middle school level, at the elementary level, we're dealing with a seriously broken educational system that gives differential access to different people based on their class, based on their income, and a few other things. So in terms of what the needs are and will this be enough, this is like, as we've stated, this is a starting place. This is the baseline, given that in the last 30 years, in the last 40 years, the numbers have stayed stagnant. And when the number of applicants is increasing every year, as they tell us, when the number of PhDs is increasing every year, and then you have a certain population, particularly Native American and black faculty and students, stay stagnant, like that's not by coincidence. Like there has to be some mechanisms and designs put in place to keep those numbers there. So in terms of will this be enough, this is the starting point to start addressing the needs that we have for those of us that are here, but more importantly, we have to start talking about how we're going to start breaking the barriers for people, for those yet to come. So this is a starting point for us, and once we get our heads above the water and we can see a whole different field, a whole different needs are going to start to get identified, and what is needed to correct for those at this level, but also, like I said, for the pipeline, for those to come yet. So yeah. Was there a second question or another question?
Thanks, Yoel. My name is Paul Spickard. I'm in the history department, and I teach also in Black Studies and Asian American Studies. I'm very much in favor of all the things you are demanding. I think that the one that is going to be the toughest nut to crack is you've got a generally supportive set of people you're talking to. The toughest nut to crack is going to be the faculty in science and engineering and places like that. So in your discussions with Dean Everett, with the Chancellor, with the others, what ongoing, since faculty are hired by faculty, and the faculties of the various parts of the university get really chippy if the administration says we would like you to do this. What institutional stuff are you going to put in place at the faculty level to make those kind of faculty changes? That is there something? Is there a faculty committee that Dean Everett can gather around her to monitor these commitments and have ongoing discussions with the department chairs and deans in the sciences to make sure that they follow through on those kind of commitments? Because it's really hard, even in places, because like white people think niceness is enough. And it's so not about niceness. They don't understand that. So you need to have an ongoing faculty presence, and you guys who are graduating need to have an ongoing connection. You know, we need to know where you are and what your address is to get your voice back in on this, on a long-term thing. Because, you know, because you've been here 4 years trying to do this kind of stuff, and now it's coming to fruition. It's coming to fruition right before school's out for summertime. And that's a time that administrations generally kind of like making commitments because nobody's going to be around to monitor them while after you guys have graduated. So anyway, think on those things and think on getting that kind of commitment. Okay?
Thank you, Professor Spickard. By the way, I asked the professor, I saw him earlier like 3 hours ago, asked him to be here, and he's here, so thank you for that. In terms of the campus administration, they have been very, very, very clear with us from the very beginning, the issues they're going to have with faculty, and particularly what they called not diversity-friendly faculty across the disciplines. In terms of, I guess the first point, in terms of having people to follow up, because some of us are leaving, as we said in the press conference, there is people staying here who are second years and third years who will be incoming fourth years who will see this through. It will be a grave miscalculation on administration's part to think that just because some of us are leaving, there will not be people to follow up. So there will be people to follow up. They will be here during the summer, and they will be here during the fall, and all throughout next year. So it would be in everyone's best interest if we kept working on this collaboratively. In terms of the issue with faculty, the recommendations we've put forth this morning included several institutional mechanisms that require a more serious, a more deeper, a more thoughtful institutional commitment to increase these numbers. And as we said, they seemed receptive to it, and we said, we want to hear your responses point by point to all the points and recommendations we've made by next week. And, by next week is when we will know what exactly they're committing to and how much resources they will deploy to those commitments, and then follow up through that. So yeah, but hopefully by next week we'll know what particular institutional mechanisms that will be put in place to recruit senior faculty, and particularly and more importantly to all of us junior faculty, ladder faculty who are coming at the assistant professor level with very serious wealth disparities, particularly for faculty of color to come live here in Santa Barbara, which is very expensive. But we'll know by next week which ones in particular they're accepting, and at which point we'll be able to discuss and disclose like what commitments we've secured thus far.
Claudine Michel, Black Studies and Student Affairs. I've been on the campus over 30 years, and I have to say that I've seen a lot of student movement, and I think the student movement is very strong. I think the students understood Nkrumah's motto about education, organization, and action, and I've followed the work that they've been doing over the past 3 months, and I have a lot of hope that this is meaningful and this is powerful and it's going to stay, and other generations of students will pick up, and those of us on the faculty and on the staff will be there to make sure that the implementation goes on. Like Yoel said about the inequities in the educational system. It sounds like a joke, but it's almost like the zip code where you live determines the kind of education that you have and the kind of opportunities that you are afforded. And the American educational system really reproduces the inequalities that have created them. And they talk about the meritocratic myth, which is, you do well and you have abilities, but it's really other variables like class and race and ableism and all these things. So I just really am here to say that I am empowered by the work that you've done. You understood that if you didn't follow up, nothing will happen. It will be like the 1954 case of with all deliberate school speed, that school will be, integrated. So milestones are very important, and I know that in the Division of Student Affairs, the Vice Chancellor and a number of us, Katia and Mary, we've talked about putting a type of a campus committee to really back up the students and serve as a kind of institutional commitment to make sure that, the changes are meaningful and long-lasting. But really, with all my years on the campus, I've seen a lot of movement. And since the 1989 ethnic studies movement, and, I've seen some important changes in Chicano and Chicano studies also. But this is really empowering, and I think I have hope that it's not going to go away in the same way that in the 60s, the people of color created ethnic studies department. This is time to expand past the ethnic studies department themselves and infuse the curriculum. So with all my heart, all my gratitude to you, and I know that I speak for my colleagues also. So thank you very much. We're humbled by what you've done.
I really want to thank Claudine Michelle for what she just said, and I don't want anybody here to get the wrong idea that just because you're not black doesn't mean this won't affect you. I mean, this will have, we're hoping, a positive effect on everybody. We really need more faces of color on this campus, and we have, I'm so proud to see you all here, because we have to stand in solidarity. Like, it can't just be black faces here, the little of us that there are. It can't just be black faces, it has to be all of us. And I really want everybody to understand your presence on this campus is a form of not just solidarity, but resistance against the institution. So just stay here, keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much.
Any other questions or last comments before we close up? Very good, brother.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharik Hashmi. I'm the graduate program advisor with Chicana and Chicano Studies. We got good representation here. I want to link back to the question about that was asked earlier about how do we sustain this? How do we stay away from the cynicism? And I think building solidarity networks is an integral part of that. I think when you stand alone, your struggle is much greater than if you share it with others. And so I think that in resisting the cynicism that can come from, and burnout that comes from this work, is very important to build those solidarity networks. So thank you for opening the space. Thank you for having this discussion. Increasing equality for one person is increasing equality for everyone. And so thank you on my behalf and the people that will follow in my footsteps.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. We really appreciate your presence, and I want to thank you all. And when we get new updates, hopefully we can tell you, and we can all build solidarity amongst each other.
Yeah, just as Kashira said, thank you guys all for coming out. I hope that you will continue to follow along with the improvement of the demands, even throughout the summer, throughout next year. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, just echoing what everyone was saying, we'll be able to provide you with more updates as we go forward. We are very grateful for all of you that are here. Just to echo what the brother just said, solidarity breaks chains. My roommate Miguel right there always says, solidarity will free us all the time. Every time before I go to sleep, that's what he tells me. But like seriously though, yes. See that? Ciro. Thank you. That's right. That's right. But seriously, we want to thank all of you for coming out. This really means a lot to us. And even though there's just 4 of us here right now, we're standing on the shoulders of many, many people who've come before us. We're not speaking for people. We're speaking with the people for what they've asked us to do and for what we feel like was the right thing to do for all of us collectively. Just wanted to make sure that, the credit is distributed amongst the people who came before us, who've shed their blood, literally, for us to be here, for us to be alive, for us to be walking on this campus. And this is, in a very small way, our way of paying it back and paying it forward for the people that have mentored us and that have gotten us here, many of whom are in the crowd. So I just wanted to say thank you all for that.
And last comment, as you was saying, we represent the people of the past, the shoulder that we are standing on, as well as the people of the present. We would not be here without you all, and I really want you all to know that we would not be here without you all. This is going to be a long, hard-fought battle. We're more than willing to put ourselves on the front lines. We just need to know y'all are behind us with those fists of solidarity and those signs of support. So thank you so much for coming out. Holla back! Holla back! I got your back! What do you want to do? All right, everybody, we're about to do the unity clap. We're about to do the unity clap. If you don't know it, we're going to learn it right now, and Navi is going to lead us. Pay attention.
Not everything.
I was trying to find pirates. No, we saw you. We saw you when you came back. No, because she was like walking towards Jorge, and I was